Have you ever struggled with traditional learning? Endless lectures, rigid formats, and a one-size-fits-all approach? We've all wished for something more engaging, more personal, maybe even fun. Today we meet a trailblazer who is making that vision a reality with AI, revolutionizing learning in both classrooms and corporate training. My name is Alexander Nevsky, and this is Innovation Tales.
Navigating change, one story at a time, we share insights from leaders tackling the challenges of today's digital world. Welcome to Innovation Tales, the podcast exploring the human side of digital transformation.
Today, we're tackling three big questions at the intersection of AI and learning. How do we overcome challenges like engagement and attention in training? Can AI truly scale personalized learning without losing quality? And what does it all mean for the role of educators and trainers in the future? To help us unpack these questions, we're joined by Juliette Denny, a pioneer in learning and development with over 2 decades of experience reshaping how we acquire knowledge. As the founder of Iridescent Technology and Growth Engineering, she's helped global giants like Apple, Cisco, and L'Oréal rethink engagement through gamification and personalization. Now with Zavmo.ai, she's taking learning to the next level, leveraging AI to craft dynamic, adaptive, and immersive experiences. Whether you're leading corporate training programs or navigating digital transformation in education, Juliette's insights will help you cut through the hype and harness AI for real impact. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Juliette Denny. Juliette, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
It's a pleasure to have you here. You've been a passionate advocate for transforming learning through technology, and your work has helped shape how companies think about engagement and personalization. But let's set the stage for our audience. And the first question I wanted to ask you is, how would you describe the biggest challenges you were working on in learning and development before 2022 and the new wave of generative AI?
It's a great question, isn't it? Education is something that touches everybody in the world. And I think when we reimagine what education should look like, we can be quite bold with what that future looks like because of our own experiences with education. So I think with the emergence of AI, we're standing on the precipice of a real moment in terms of what the role of education is and what that role has the potential to do for human creativity and innovation. As you said, I've spent the last sort of 25 years building edtech companies, and our focus with growth engineering is very much on learner engagement. There's a thesis that goes around, which is if people engage more with their learning, fundamentally the learning will have a bigger impact. And I think where I am now is that engagement is part of the problem, but it is certainly by no means all of the problem. So the kind of issues that we are trying to look at now, I think can be overall summarized in 3 particular kind of areas. First of all, have we got the learner's attention? Then can we enable the learner to concentrate and focus sufficiently in order to create that learning and cascade that learning so that it becomes behavior? And then the final thing is this idea of personalization. And both of those first 2 things can be wrapped up in the umbrella of the more personal we can make learning, the more meaningful it becomes, and therefore humans will pay more attention and they will be able to focus and maintain concentration for longer in order to get that change of behavior or get that connecting to ideas from different industries in order to create innovation.
Right. So maximizing engagement, helping people focus as they engage with the learning process, and making it personalizing the process for both making it more engaging, which is the first point, but also to make it more effective, I'm guessing. What does personalization mean in the field?
So I'm dyslexic and my kids are dyslexic. Rightly or wrongly, I really do fundamentally believe that anyone pretty much can get a doctorate, or anyone can gain the dizzy heights of any sort of education. And I think through education comes, more curiosity and more interest in life. The more we know, the more We are, I don't know, inspired, and it keeps us young. But I think for a lot of people in school, they are locked out early. Okay. Now they might be locked out because, let's say, they live in poverty and they don't have enough food in their stomach in order to maintain concentration. They might have a neurodiversity issue like ADHD or dyslexia, which means that it's more difficult for us to solidify concepts and basically make sense of them. It doesn't mean to say that we're less intelligent, just the kid that doesn't have any stomach in his food when he goes to his first lesson. It also doesn't mean that the way that we're currently taught in schools is the right instructional design for the majority of people. Okay, so we know that certain people respond very well to how classrooms are structured or how e-learning is currently structured. But my desire is to unlock potential by creating instructional design experiences that are unique for the individual. So let me give you a really tangible example.
Mhm.
My son is very dyslexic, but he has a passion for motorbikes, surfing, the typical stuff. And
Mhm.
he can basically get anything to work mechanically in a flash. There's nothing stupid about this kid at all. It's just that his brain works in a different way. So let's say that we were able to teach him math. Able to teach him geography. We're able to teach him subjects by hooking and linking it into things that he is really excited about. So context is everything. Content is almost secondary to the context in which we put that content. And what I'm interested in is we understand, okay, so we're not ripping up the education system of the world, not yet anyway. You know, we're going to carry on delivering the same content, GCSEs, A levels, university degrees, those we're assuming that society will still want those. Governments are not going to rip up, that. But what we are saying is that with the power of AI, we can do something very different with instructional design. And again, that doesn't mean to say we're getting rid of teachers. The role of schools and universities is far more than just learning things. It's about the whole experience. But what I'm interested in is empowering every human on the planet, no matter how they learn, to basically be able to get that content in a way that is contextualized to maximize their curiosity.
Yeah, amazing. And to be honest, I'm also sometimes an educator, and I have very strong opinions about how things should evolve. And up to a couple of years ago, I felt like we had reached a glass ceiling in a way. We had these educational system that we've inherited to standardize for the modern world required people to do way too much memorization and standard tests and not developing the skills of creativity and collaboration. And it did feel a little bit like there just needed to be a bit of a revolution. We needed to bring down the system to recreate a new one, just because there was so much resistance I felt in introducing more personalized experiences and learning experiences where we reverse the focus from like filling empty vessels to enabling people to learn what they care. I guess I feel like artificial intelligence, and especially the way that's based on large language models, is almost like a key that is helping us unlock these new ways of teaching. Is that kind of also your experience? And if yes, can you describe how artificial intelligence is making an impact in specific examples?
So large language models clearly allow you to do extraordinary things in terms of shift through huge volumes of data and allow you to basically make predictions, allow you to understand best fit, allow you to do a lot of stuff that we just couldn't do before. But AI in itself, in the context of the problem that I'm trying to solve, is the foundational technology. But that AI needs to be taught how humans think and how we learn. Yeah. So the way that we are utilizing AI is very much based on how humans learn. So we lean more into psychology and specific learning models. So the model that we most strongly utilize within our kind of AI, so what Zavmo draws upon, is Bloom's taxonomy. There are many other elements that Zavmo draws on, like cognitive load theory, but Bloom's taxonomy is the one that allows humans not just to. So, what Bloom's taxonomy talks about is the way the brain thinks about learning and the hierarchy of what the brain does when it knows something and is actively engaged. So, at the bottom, it's the learner receiving knowledge. Okay. So, it's like a basic do you remember? Does it make sense to you? But the human brain doesn't find that very interesting. Okay, so it might for a second, but what the human brain really wants to do is it wants to apply, it wants to evaluate, and then what it wants to do is build on that knowledge, right? And that's where humans really, the curiosity sparks come alive. And once they start thinking about that knowledge in a way that can be useful for them, it then starts to solidify and move from their short-term memory into their long-term memory. And this is the excitement and the joy people get when they are learning. Okay. So we want active thinkers when people are learning. And so this is what Zavmo does. It takes an understanding broadly of you, right? What your role is, what your ambitions are, what your life design is, what your hobbies are, what your interests in is. And it basically builds a path that, you agree to. This is the development path I want to go on. And then it basically delivers the content in a way that will maximize your interest in that subject because it is relevant to your hopes, dreams, desires. It is interwoven with your interest, your hobbies, your ambitions, and it's also relevant to your everyday role. So suddenly that learning experience is made incredibly personal. And then what happens is that you're asked to demonstrate how that knowledge will be useful. And so through doing that, you're consolidating it, and then your brain is in the ideal state in order to move that into long-term learning. And the reason the long-term memory is so important is that human beings have an extraordinary capacity for creativity and innovation. But that creativity and innovation only happens at the cusp of two disparate ideas, right? Coming together, and suddenly we've created something new, right? So what we need to do is we need to ensure that not only people are learning, but they're also able to cascade that information in a way that they can constantly refer back to it in order to make connections and drive innovation. So this is the real excitement. It's not AI for AI's sake. It's how do we make AI work with what we know about human behavior, what we know about what inspires creativity, what we know about how people learn in order to make learning and development an adventure.
This is so exciting. Yes. When listening to your description, I was reflecting on my own experiences as a trainer, let's say. I would be given these ready-to-go courses that were extremely boring because I had everything I needed to say and I just needed to read the stuff. And from the student's perspective, they had exercises where it was click here, click there. It would get them like on the first 2, maybe 3 levels of Bloom's taxonomy, so they would be able to repeat the content maybe if asked, and they would be able to answer a few multiple choice questions, and maybe they would even be able to go through one of the exercises and repeat the set of actions that they had done during classroom. But it was traditionally quite hard to design educational experiences that enable you to make connections, to apply your skills to real world problems, to be able to critique a proposed approach, etc. And in my experience, in order to go further, it would require a tremendous amount of effort on my part to create very unusual real life simulations of something, which just didn't scale. Like I could do that for a small group, but yeah, that was extremely limited and expensive. And of course, I enjoyed it as an educator, but there's only so many people that I could provide these opportunities. And so to me, it sounds super exciting that the way you were seeing artificial intelligence, like you said, not for artificial intelligence sake, but as a tool to be able to personalize at scale, to create deep learning experiences where the student doesn't just have to repeat something, but has to think through it, try and apply the skills. So is that what you were referring to? Does that connect with your experience?
Yeah, I mean, that is exactly it. What we want is to basically create a learning experience utilizing AI that allows humans to function ultimately at a higher level. We know what the best learning experience should look like, very akin to coaching, but you also need all of the other elements. So you need the context of the person's role. You need how that person is feeling in terms of even their blood sugars, how that person is feeling in terms of have they had something happen. So, the sensitivity analysis. And so what we're looking at when we are programming Zavmo is what things can we pick up from the learner, not just in terms of the role they do, their future ambitions, their hobbies, but also how attentive they are. So how much they're concentrating, how much they're applying, so that we can change and pivot in real time. Zavmo can change and pivot in real time in order to maximize the enjoyment that learner is getting. Okay. So it's not about increasing the overall learning time. It's about getting the learner to really enjoy learning. Because if we can do that, then fundamentally we know that they will come back for more. This personalized way of learning, some people are able to spend an hour and a half, 2 hours with Zavmo, right? Which is quite extraordinary. You would never get people choosing to do that on a piece of e-learning. But it's quite intense because every time you have a conversation with Zavmo, either speaking or typing, it's about you. So you are really thinking about your response. You're really having to work at it. So although we are seeing overall people spending a lot more time with Zavmo than they would, let's say, on a traditional learning platform or whatever, we're also seeing varying lengths of intensity. Some people's concentration just breaks. So they might be doing it for sort of 15 minutes or 20 minutes, but it doesn't matter. Essentially, Zavmo remembers the last thing you have, they'll recap, and then basically you'll move through it. The other thing that is extraordinary, I think, with Zavmo is we have managed to ingest a huge amount of data on the world's global education systems. So it's not just teaching whatever's in the LLM model. We don't want that, obviously. We want, if a child is going through GCSE maths, we want to teach them GCSE maths according to the curricula in the UK. If they are in Armenia and they are studying entrepreneurial skills to build IT businesses, we want to ensure that they are being taught that subject in line with what the Armenian government has signed off as best practice. Do you see what I mean? So
Absolutely.
what we're not saying is that, going back to a comment that you made earlier, we're not reskinning an LLM model. We're fundamentally customizing the data lake for the government that we're working for, the large corporate we're working for, ensuring that data lake is only filled with the information that is directly relevant and valuable to that organization. And then we are putting the psychological prompt layer on that. Basically, that psychological prompt layer is in and around our understanding of how we drive learning and better learning outcomes. So that's where the sort of neuroscience really does come in. It's a game of two halves. Of course, we are a tech company, but mostly What we're interested in is the human brain because we want to get better outcomes.
That makes so much sense. And I'm tempted to ask a relatively deep question. How much of a challenge it is for you, and where are you in solving that challenge if it is? Foundational large language models are trained to respond in a very supportive way. It's almost like a yes and all the time, right? Whatever you type into, I don't know, ChatGPT or something, Gemini, whatever, it's never going to tell you, hold on, no, that's wrong, very rarely. It's designed to be a helpful assistant, which is a great persona to have for many tasks. But if I'm thinking about a human tutor, mentor, coach, it's a bit different. The way that you engage with a student, you're obviously trying to be supportive. You're never telling the student that they're not smart enough or anything like that. That is ridiculous. But at the same time, you can't take what the student's telling you at face value and say, yeah, yes, this is exactly like this, which is very often what the experience is with large language models when they're deployed as chatbots. So is that an issue you've run into with Zavmo? And if yes, where are you in solving this?
So we use large language models. Yeah, we use many different large language models for different agents that basically Zavmo is made up of. So Zavmo has myriad of different agents that all work together. So it's a 4-step process. So it's discovery. So discovering the role that you're doing, your future role, your hobbies, your interests, your neurodiversity needs, just basically all about you. Then what Zavmo will do is it will go into the data lake, which is filled with national approved qualifications. So whether this is a degree you're pursuing, whether it's A levels, whether it's financial accounting, whether it's compliance, whether it's project management, it will go into the data lake, which has over 1 million different qualifications. It is huge, this data lake. And it will come back with a series of recommendations for you. And then you will discuss with Zavmo what those recommendations are and the time that you have available to do them. And Zavmo will then put that into your delivery plan and you'll agree that. Then Zavmo will start stage 3, which is delivery. And delivery is done through various different types of conversations. So this can be anything from Socratic dialogue, it can be role play, it can be case studies, it can be, the list goes on, right? It's conversational, interactive, coaching style, mentoring style. It can mimic your boss. So then you go into delivery. And then the final aspect, when you've met all of the learning outcomes, is demonstration. And that's when the student has to demonstrate that they know the subject. Now, let's now talk about what we've ingested. Okay, so we have ingested learning specifications from around the world, from different government approved organizations. And these learning specifications, they are large documents which don't contain the full content, but what they do contain is pathways. So what you need to know in order to start the qualification, what you will know when you end the qualification. And what Zavmo does is, in most of these qualifications, you have a pass, a merit, or a distinction. What Zavmo will allow you to do is, if you get a pass, Zavmo will give you feedback in order to try to get you to a merit or a distinction, if that's what you want to do, or you can pass out and go on to the next credit. So we absolutely never rely on the large language model to teach. If we did that, that would open us up to all sorts of biases and hallucinations and all sorts of horrendous things that you cannot even, you don't want that. So Zavmo is not allowed to teach anything that is not within the learning specification. We have control of what that large language model is allowed to draw back from in order to maintain the integrity and the experience in line with what the organization or the government is looking to do.
Is there one piece of advice that you would give to today's L&D leaders?
I'm lucky enough to speak to a lot of L&D leaders on a weekly basis, and I think that there's a lot of fear and worry about AI and how AI will impact their roles and their organization. And I think the reality is nobody knows how this future will unfold. But I think experimentation is a fun way to see if AI can add value to your organization. So I think piloting new ideas is a great way of working out whether it works for your organization and it adds value. And the sooner that you can start piloting innovative ideas in a small way, not in a big way, the easier it will be for your organization to move forward with velocity, because obviously AI is the future. And I don't think anybody knows the answer. Nobody knows the future. Nobody knows the killer application. But what I am very clear on, having worked in learning technologies for the last 25 years, is that we are moving away from traditional learning experience platforms, e-learning, micro-learning. There is a better way, and AI can help us facilitate this. Although it might be scary, I would say dive in, start doing pilots, play around in the sandpit and see what comes out.
Great advice. Thank you. And the final question I ask is, amidst all this change that we're just described and talking about, is there maybe one thing that you actually expect to remain constant 10 years from now?
What will definitely remain constant is the way the brain works. As educators, we need to spend more time worrying about instructional design and worrying about teaching methodologies rather than content. Content is everywhere. Content is everywhere. What we need is context. What I would say is the brain is an incredible machine. It is so much more powerful than the AI we have now in terms of its ability to maintain connection, its ability to basically process on lower energy. We have inside our bodies something which is just filled with innovation, creativity, and magic in a way that AI is just nowhere close. So this idea of getting AI to act as a facilitator for, human creativity, this is what we should be focusing on. Let's not talk about large language models. We know how they work. We know how large data sets work. That's uninteresting. What's interesting is us. How do we layer more human onto this kind of foundational AI technology? That's what I'd like people to focus on.
I agree completely, and I share your passion. With that, Juliette, thank you very much for this great conversation.
Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you, Alex.
From tackling engagement challenges to scaling personalized learning, Juliette has shown us how artificial intelligence isn't just about automating content delivery. It's about creating deeper, more meaningful learning experiences that adapt to individual needs. As leaders navigating digital transformation, the question we should be asking is, how can we apply these principles to make learning in our organizations not just more efficient, but truly impactful? If you want to stay ahead of the curve in AI-powered learning and gamification, check out Iridescent Technologies' LinkedIn page. They share exclusive insights, industry updates, and thought leadership from Juliette and her team, helping organizations rethink engagement and training at scale. The link is in the description. As always, we have more exciting topics and guest appearances lined up, so stay tuned for more tales of innovation that inspire, challenge, and transform. Until next time, peace.
Thanks for tuning in to Innovation Tales. Get inspired, connect with other practitioners, and approach the digital revolution with confidence. Visit innovation-tales.com for more episodes. See you next time.